Hello everyone, welcome to Marlin Chess Kids. Today I'm going to show you the game played by Senft and Alperen. And this game is very beautiful with the Queen Gambit opening and complete in only 20 moves. Let's see how the game can be played. And the game starts with the pawn to d4, d5, c4, and now the black takes the pawn, d takes c4, and here you have the queen gambit accepted. Then the game to continue with e3, knight f6, bishop takes c4, and e6 was played, and now the knight to f3 and a6 was played. And here in this position you can see that this is the first 5 move, and the white is slightly better in this position because the white has 2 pieces developed, and the next move will allow the white to go for a castling. So after this, the white continue to play a4. His b6 was played. Then the white castling, and bishop to b7, then queen to e2, and you have knight b to d7, then rook to d1, and here is a nice move that the white continue with the idea of having to push the pawn forwards and keep on the pressure and attack. And you also have the idea of push the pawn at e3 onwards and attack the knight at f6. So after this, bishop e7 was played and preparing for a castling. And now the knight c3 and c5 was played. And here again you can see this is the first 10 move, and the position here is white is better. So after this position, the white continued to play a e4 with the pawn attack. And now the white that can play also like d5 and keep on the pressure, and also keep moving the pawn to e6 and attack the bishop. So if you're castling to the king side, then this bishop will be trapped and will be captured with the pawn. So after this, the pawn at c takes d4. Then now the knight capture back the d4, and here you can see that this is a very strong knight in the center of the golden square. So this is a critical path where the knight from f to d4 and then can capture the pawn at e6 and attack the queen at d8. And also once a knight get to this position, the knight can go for a fork, go to c7 and attack the king, at the same time capture the rook, or the knight can just simply capture the pawn at g7 and attack the king. So the knight in the center square will have many activity, and the knight is not being attacked by any pieces. And now after this, the black play queen to b8 to prevent the pawn push to e5. After this, the white continue to play a bishop to g5. Then in this position, there is another suggestion that you can play, which is very beautiful, where you can sacrifice the bishop. For example, bishop takes e6, and after, if the pawn to capture, then you can just use the knight to capture the pawn and attack another pawn at g7. So for example, the knight capture, and if the king go to f7 to protect the pawn. This decision, the king cannot castling because the knight is attacking the square where the king need to be castled. So if the king to f7, then the queen will go to c4 and direct attack the king, pinning the king, and the knight can go for a discover attack, such as the knight to c7 and discover attack and capture the rook after the action. So for example, if the knight go to e5 attacking the queen will just move back to b3, and now if any move from the black, such as a bishop to c8 to attack the knight, and you can just have the open check the king, and the knight will be attack the rook, and here you have a single move, a double attack, and bringing back the rook. So after king to f8, then the knight just capture the rook and the queen just capture the rook, and after this position you can see that the white is clearly better in this position. So in the actual game, after queen b8, the white played a bishop g5, then bishop to d6 was played, and now the bishop capture the pawn. Bishop takes e6 and sacrifice. So bishop takes e6, sacrifice, and pawn capture, and now the knight capture, and with the idea of capture the pawn at g7 and attack the king and prevent the king from castling because the knight is attacking the square. And also slowly threatening to play f4 pawn and go for the fork with the pawn to d5. So after this, the king moved to f7, and now queen to c4 with the idea of open check. And now after this, the queen go to the rook go to c8, and here is a blunder because after this position you can play a open check with the knight. So in this game, the white made a very beautiful open check, but instead in making a move the knight with the open and double check. For example, in the actual game, the white play a knight to d8, and this is an open and a double check. And with this, the king need to move away the king. For example, king to e8, and here the white continue to check with queen e6, sacrificing the knight. So after this, the king capture the knight, and now the rook capture back the bishop. Rook takes d6 and preparing to capture the knight and checkmate, and because the bishop is pinning the king. So in the actual game, after this move, the black play a king to c7, and after this we have the checkmate in 5, and the checkmate in 5, and the white is winning the game. So I give a couple of seconds to find how the white can continue to play and checkmate the game. Well, congratulations for those who found the answer, and for those who like to enjoy the show, here are the games that the black play and checkmate in 5. In the actual game, the white play a bishop capture the knight, and now the queen capture this knight will be a checkmate. So after this position, if you capture back with the knight, then queen to e7, you check the king, and the king will have no place to move, and the only way is to block with the knight. Knight to d7, and the queen capture will be a checkmate. So in the actual game, after bishop capture, the rook to d8 to protect the knight, and now the knight to b5, and here is another knight sacrifice, and now they allow the rook to go to c1 and attack the c file and checkmate the king. So after a takes the pawn, then you have a rook takes d7 and check the king. Now the rook capture back again, then you have a rook to c1 and check the king, and now if the bishop to protect, and the queen will just capture the bishop and checkmate the king. So back to the position of king to c7. The fastest move, another idea you can play, is only made in 4, such as this analysis mentioned. You can just straight move the knight to b5 and check the king. And if the king move to d8, then you can just use a beautiful ending with the rook. Rook takes the knight and checkmate the king, as the king will have no place to move and the knight is being pinned by the bishop. So for example, rook takes and checkmate. Or you can also use a queen to check and meet the king. So this knight b5 check is also very strong, where you can capture with the pawn. After capture with the pawn, you can just use the rook to c1 and attack the king. So rook to c1 and check the king. And now again, if the king move to d8, you have the rook checkmate or the queen checkmate. So if you block with the knight to c5, then you have queen to e7 check, and now again the king cannot move anything, and if you block with the knight, then you can just use the queen to checkmate the king. So you have a lot of interesting pin idea and sacrifice 2 knights in this game. And if you block with the bishop, such as bishop to c6, then again you can just use the rook to capture the king and check, and now the bishop cannot be dead because it's being pinned. And if you use a knight to capture the rook, then the queen again to capture the bishop and checkmate the king. So with this, thank you.